I'll call the January 24th Park Street order. First order of agenda, approval of the agenda. Moved by Treasurer Binder, second by
Howard.
second by Karen Howard, all in favor, by saying aye.
Aye.
Third item, approval of the December 27th, 2022 minutes. I'll get a chance to read them.
So moved, Howard.
Moved by Karen Powers, second by Roy Hodger.
Yeah.
Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor by saying aye. Aye. Fourth item, public comment.
No one's on Zoom, and then I don't believe we have anyone.
Fifth item, presentation, Life Fest update, John Doherty, Festival Director.
Hi,
Hi.
thanks for having me down here. I sent around the program from our last festival. This year we're entering, I can do something else. This year we're entering our 25th year. So it's our 20. We're trying to figure this out because obviously 2020 there was this thing. I don't know if you guys are aware that kind of shut a lot of things down. So we're entering our 25th year. We've done 24 festivals. Technically, our 2020 we did our virtual event, so we still did a festival or an event, but so we're excited that we're kind of having our silver anniversary and putting that out there. So we're excited. Last year we saw about a 4.5% growth in attendance, so we continue to grow every year. The only year that didn't have any notable growth was the 2019 to 21. So that week we stayed consistent that 1 year. Other than that, we've grown anywhere from 13% to as little as 2% since the first year. Obviously, we saw massive growth the first 10 years, and then that has slowed down. But we're still continuing to grow at about 4% a year. We love the property. We love everything. We saw about 300 of our primitive sites disappear when the improvement on the I don't know what you guys call it, parking lots, like 3, 4, 5 now, or whatever numbers those are. 2, 3, and 4. 2, 3, 4. When those came in, we lost about 300 primitive sites, which worked because we had about 500 that we typically always had left over at the end of each event. So those were displaced into other areas of grassy primitive area, and then allowed us to convert that to electric camping, which sold out literally the second we put it out there. So people are hungry to camp in their RVs on the property. And we still have a lot of tent camping that comes, but we figured last year that of the 20 numbers vary anywhere from 25,000 to 30,000 people per day, depending upon which day. So we kind of peak at 30,000 on Saturday. And Thursday sees about 25,000 per day. About 12,000 of them camp. So 12,000 people move onto the property and hang out at Sunnyview all weekend, and the rest come in and out. Last year was, for all measurables, probably our most successful year. The weather was amazing. The grounds were great. Other than, I know, obviously the new grass areas that we're in, we had some, I know we did. Somebody drove over something and made it fix everything, but from a functional standpoint, last year was probably our cleanest year to date. So we're super excited about moving into 23 and moving forward. So
Yeah, I invited John here. I know Chairman Norton wanted to invite a few of the groups here over the winter month. Some of the bigger groups that we work with, and obviously Life Fest being being our biggest event with the County Parks Department. So, you know, now is an opportunity to, if you have any questions for John, I know he came from Appleton, so if you have any questions or thoughts for the future or just anything, now's an opportunity to ask them some questions, or if you've ever been to Life Fest and you're wondering even what this thing is, or I'm sure most of us know, but.
So we open it up to all of you for tickets and passes, obviously, as committee members and stuff. If you need stuff, just talk to Rick and we'll get you passes and get you guys on the ground so you can see how we use your property, so.
Mayor?
I have a question. While EAA far outpaces this problem,
Mhm.
but my understanding is that EAA and Life Fest are the two biggest events that draw human trafficking. And I'm just wondering what you're doing to combat that.
I mean, that's not a statistic that I know that we draw human trafficking into the area. I don't have any data or anything on that.
We don't,
I
okay,
don't, yeah.
okay.
No one, I mean. Oshkosh Police Department hasn't said anything about that, so.
Okay.
We've never had those conversations.
I know you talked about outgrowing the facility in 10 years. Now that we bought that 20 acres, I would assume that that would be basically good for a long time.
Yeah, that was well before the stage, the stage build and that kind of stuff. As we look at, actually, I had a meeting with our exec team last night, as we look at how to use the stadium. We've kind of closed it down to the gravel, you know, we kept our people mostly on the gravel and into the bleachers. As we're starting to look at growth, we're gonna kind of push out the tents on the sides and hopefully start creeping up into that grass to expand out, but those that were there last year on Saturday night to see Skillet close out, it was the biggest crowd that we've ever had. And estimated that the stadium held about 30,000 people. With that being said, we weren't into the hills a whole lot, so there is room to grow, so. Wonder, do you have any of that, the camera footage from that? Would you have anything that got nighttime? We have a drone picture of it, but of course it's dark, so.
Probably not anymore, and yeah, those camera systems don't hold that much.
Okay.
As far as duration, yeah, maybe.
But I mean, the bleachers were full, the back sides of the hills were full. The center of the stadium was full, and we were starting to encroach in on the grass and stuff, so.
Do you think it'd be helpful on the backside of that stage to have a changing area and a area for the entertainers to basically prepare before I mean, right now the stage is just open, there's no place for them to change. You know, like most of them have a dressing room where they basically get prepared to come to see their concert. Where that basically with nothing behind that stage, I think would be an asset to that if you had a dressing room and a lounge back there. I know a lot of times they have pre-parties where you get to meet the individuals that are performing, and you know, I would think that would be an amenity to that stage if it had something like that on there.
Yeah, so we bring in temporary facilities for our event. We bring in job trailers through Daco, which is they rent the construction job trailers. We bring those in. I know when power was pulled out there and that the Connex box that was built onto the stage, I know there's 1,200 amps or some stupid number of power that's available for future expansion into something like that. I mean, it would always be nice to have, you know, like you said, dressing rooms and changing rooms and that kind of stuff as infrastructure allows it to happen. Again, we bring in temporary for our event, but I know looking to attract, you know, acts and bigger events to that stage, more infrastructure is always better, so.
Some of the conversations that were had in the past was to basically go on the backside of the road and erect like a pole building.
Yep.
With some internal rooms that could have, you know, a couple of green rooms, dressing rooms, maybe, you know, a shower, bathroom or two, and then like a open area that could just be utilized for whether it's meet and greets, whether it's, you know, staff setting up. You know, yeah, just a meeting room kind of thing, but just here's on like this end of the building, there's a couple of showers, couple of bathrooms, couple of smaller rooms. And then the rest of it just kind of be in a wide open area.
These would be permanent, right? Permanent structure?
Yes, this would be a permanent, like pit bull style building, just basic, you know. But just having that internal structure, so that would eliminate a couple of the job trailers that would have to be brought in. As well as providing a little more turnkey facility to try and attract other groups to maybe come in and utilize that area. without having so much of the overhead and having to bring in every single thing backstage.
Budgetarily speaking, it costs about $20,000 to bring in the infrastructure that we temporarily use. So, I know I've had some conversations and, you know, I mean, you can go to Menards and buy a pit pole building for $50,000 with nothing in it, right? I mean, so at some point in time, well, it's the same reason that we invested in the stage. You know, 5 years of renting the temporary structure is offset by one-time purchase of the permanent structure. So, we've definitely had some internal conversations as we, you know, from our standpoint, it'd be something that we would look to maybe entertain once we, you know, finish paying off the stage. We've got 2 years left on that agreement with the Pfeiffer Brothers Construction who built the structure, so.
I think even if the parks would partner and each pay for half, I think it'd be, that stage right now to us, we can't find anybody to use it. Because there's no amenities to a stage, it's a stage. And in order for them to put a concert on, you know, it costs anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000 to get a band. And then you're gonna bring in more than $100,000 worth of infrastructure, because there's no area for them to basically prepare for their concert, and there's no bathrooms, and, you know, I mean, it's just, if we're ever gonna basically make that stage more useful, we need more amenities, and I would assume that you're gonna be here for the next 20 years, so you would be using them too. You
Yeah,
know, so if we would partner together and somehow develop that, it would be a benefit for both parties.
yeah, from an investment standpoint, like I said, we've got 2 years left on our stage agreement. And then, you know, I don't want to say the checkbook's open again, but then we can start looking at from a budgetary standpoint. Because while the event is a $2 million event and brings in $6 million into the county, we don't pocket most of that.
Oh, right.
We have a very small return on our investment to put on the event every year. But again, we've done that with other things. So like the catwalk or the thrust that comes off the front of the stage, we purchased that. We were renting it every year. We saw it and said, you know, 3 years worth of renting it, we can own it. So let's purchase that. So there are infrastructure things for the stage and for performances that we own, bike rack, barricade, you know, the security type stuff. We've made, you know, smaller investments in some of those types of things as well. So as we move forward, we totally, I mean, if you guys are interested in pulling that together, I mean, now's not a good time to build anything. I think construction costs are still pretty high, but as we move forward, I know we have partnerships with Myron and Security Lukey and Pfeiffer Brothers who built the stage for us. And again, once we're done with the current contract with them, I know they're always interested in doing more. So Faith Technologies, you know, those companies that we've got partnerships with that work really well.
You know, if it's big enough right now, you've got that concrete pad, you put a tent up there for your VIPs. But it's a lot nicer if you actually have an enclosed building.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about the rain, the wind, and, you know.
Yeah.
It's air conditioned and it's just a little more comfortable for your guests as well as.
Yeah.
If somebody else puts a concert on here, you know, that they make quite a bit of money on their VIP meet and greets. And tickets are about 10 times more than the regular price.
Yeah.
So it's an amenity all the way around. So I think for us, it would be something we want to look at, because someday we want to rent that more than one time a year.
Yeah, and just to echo what John was talking about too, just even partnership, and I mean, just last year with Polsky, not Enterprise, not Polsky, you mentioned them, Faith.
Faith
They
Technologies,
put in fiber over to the stage. And then also with that, we were able to partner to get fiber over to the score booth in some areas that we needed, and so, and the county didn't see any cost for that, so, or very minimal cost for that, so that was. You know,
yeah, that was that's all trade. Yeah, that's all trade, because I mean, the program, you know, the ads are worth a lot for them. So plus I know I think they've got one of the top buildings on that big board that's out there in the stadium area. Myron's on there and Faith is on there and stuff. So they love just ask them, they love putting their name on buildings. So
and that wasn't, you know, that was, they showed us the bill, Faith, that I think was 30,000 or something, so, you know, it was a good substantial improvement that. Would have been a pretty big hit to our budget, for instance, that benefited long-term too. Small in scale compared to what you're talking about, or stage, but still those little things keep adding up.
and stuff like that. I mean, that essentially that 30 will be revealed over the next 2 years. You know, it's $15,000 sponsorship for the next 2 years. debated that. So again, looking at 2024, they're gonna come back to us and go, what else can we do that gets us? What can we put a minimal amount of cost, their actual cost into to get the sponsorship dollars? You know, like Myron, I mean, they got to write off $1 million stage. It didn't cost them $1 million to erect it, you know, those types of things, so. And they get naming rights for 10 years or whatever we put on that thing. So.
What would you like to see us do, like in the rest of that next to property? Would a pavilion be useful back there or something like that, or would you just prefer it just be all parking, you know what I mean? If you put a pavilion back there, I mean, if you got parking and camping, I guess you could basically sell camping supplies out of there, or, you know, you could have put a food stand back there, or you could put a band back there if you had a pavilion for the.
Yeah, as the Netzer property, you know, as it comes online, I know we've talked with Rick about, you know, kind of cutting through, what is it, it'd be northeast of that Flyers field. You know, and we can start growing into that. For us, the best solution for us is parking. As we would be able to pull off of the park and keep people on the other side of Y. It's way safer, way less, you know, traffic congestion, those types of things, if we can park that side and shuttle people in. You know, pavilions are always nice, just as a little place to hang out, or shuttle stop, you know, we use them for shuttle stops in the park currently. You know, shelter 1 or shelter 2 or whatever, you know, that's where you get picked up and dropped off, and so know where your car is in relation to that. The biggest infrastructure things that we would look at is, you know, hard surfaces are great, the new parking lots that we'll put in. Backstage, I know Rick and I have talked about someday, if we could make another loop of gravel back there, which would allow us to expand into that grassy area that's back there, from a more of a staffing and infrastructure side, not necessarily a public attendee side. But that's always good. And then as the new property, you know, again, hard surfaces is great from a road standpoint. We can park cars in grass all day long, but you know, if the main roadway going in and out is grass, they're just gonna tear it up and it's just gonna be a mess. So being able to get cars to and from that, trying to think of the way the property's laid out, but the area behind the YMCA, to be able to get from the property, the bigger part of the property onto the county road or county property, infrastructure to get to and from is really, for us, would be the key. Because we're gonna have a lot of golf cart traffic picking people up and bringing it back and forth, so.
So between developing the Netzer property, which would, I mean, the first thing's gonna be getting roads to get back to it, because
Yep.
like, you can't even get through that first field 6 months out of the year because it's just too wet. And behind stage, where you're talking about adding in that next roadway.
Yep.
You know, to finish that loop around the backside. Just so the board is aware, most of that field behind the stage is all clay.
Mhm.
So one of the first things we have to do is get topsoil in there. Fix the elevation, the drainage. So that it's actually usable, because most of the time, if that gets wet, we can't step foot on there. You definitely can't put a car or camper back there.
Well, you can put one there, you just can't get it out.
Yeah, you just gotta wait you gotta wait 3 weeks for it to dry before you pull it back out. So that's kind of where he's talking about there in the old pit area. Which, you know, is part of the long-term plan of getting that more usable for the rest of the year. So that it actually dries out faster, you know, because that's where the county fair puts all of their pit areas. And you're taking all that clay and dragging it across all the gravel roads, which just kind of deteriorates those. So that's part of that project, is having to get that done. So between the two, John, which would you see as a higher priority? Developing a road into Metzers, or spreading with backstage where you can put staff, camping, parking?
Yeah, so for us, so we've got 6 years left on our lease, not that we're talking leases, because we're not going anywhere. But the short-term view, developing that backstage property is more preferential for us, as we don't need that Netzer property yet from a growth standpoint. We still have about 200 primitive campsites that we don't sell. Of the 3,500 campsites, you know, to have 200 left over is not too bad. But there's about 200 that we don't typically sell, that we always use for rainy day, and they're, you know, those types of things. We have to move people and whatnot. Eventually we see ourselves moving into that property as things come online and you know, years down the road. Backstage from an infrastructure standpoint, getting that gravel and getting that back area kind of cleaned up and much more usable. Has the short-term impact of what we need to do. It has nothing to do with attendance. It has nothing to do with growing the event. But it's purely infrastructure and a operation standpoint. It gives us better places to park vehicles and put our staffing. We use about 50 of our electric sites out in the public for some of our staffing and some of our lead volunteers that could move back there. I think we tried it a couple years ago, and to the point, we put about 500 sheets of dirt deck down so we can get to and from the camping area. But as we bring, as that could come online, from a infrastructure standpoint, it would open up some of the camping and stuff in the park generally. I don't know where else we're gonna find more electric camping. That seems to be the thing that people want, is a place to put their ginormous 50-foot motorhome and plug into a 50-amp power. We sell about, of the 35,000 or 3,500 sites we have, about 1,500 of them are electric. And they sell out every year, and there's
Not the
always
kind of
gonna be
electric
more.
you want, not the kind of electric that you're talking about, or they are.
Oh, those are all electric, yeah. And we, so I don't know how many sites, I don't know if you know that rough off your head, but how many sites you guys have that are permanent? 100 of them, 200 of them, something like that.
100 and something, yeah,
It's about 120 when we go,
Somewhere
between 2, 3, and 4.
yeah.
So we utilize that 120, and then we build another 1,000 of them. Between Flyers Field, which is pretty usable for that. I don't know what y'all call the down, just south of the blacktop, but that whole section is all electric camping. And then the blacktop, we build all kinds of temporary electric power in there. And then in parking lots 2, 3, and 4, we put, well, you guys have the power on the outside, we put campers down the middle of each of those sections. So we essentially install another 1,000 electric sites on generator or temporary power. I don't know where else on the property, even if the Nestor property were to be developed, I don't see pulling the big rigs back there. I mean, it just, you get off the hard surface and it just gets to be a mess. When you guys put the loop in Flyers Field, I mean, that made a world of difference from 21 to 22. 21, obviously, we had a ton of rain. All night Thursday night, it rained all night Thursday night, and then was misty and wet all day Wednesday. So we couldn't even get campers back there. I mean, you look at our drone, we got drone footage from 21, and Graceland, right off the road is all full, but everything else we had to displace. Anything on grass was unusable. Compared to last year, even with a little bit of water, it was a little bit wet, but we were able to get everybody in, and it really kind of shored everything up, having that road in there. So that was super useful for us. Also getting rid of that goofy kind of half right turn, which is what is on the aerial there. Now that it's all squared off in a nice T intersection, it just makes it so much more functional from a logistical standpoint.
Yeah, and when you're talking about gravel, one of the next phases that we're looking at is the West Campus improvements, which is in the CIP, and that's this area here. That's the asphalt that's deteriorating and probably original since '88, and then gravel parking down in this area, so it's usable. We took, obviously, I showed those videos of this area after rainfall last fall and how wet it was compared to how wet our brand, you can't see because it's not updated here, but our brand new lots, gravel lots and ponds were over here.
Yeah, there's a nice lake that comes just west of the main entryway.
Yeah,
When you
right
get
here.
sizable rain, it's about 4 inches deep.
And that's where the proposed pond is supposed to go, so perfect. But yeah, I mean, that's where, but he's talking about kind of right in here.
Yeah, that gets pretty.
And then all these islands get flooded as well.
I don't know if you heard, but we're gonna put a $800,000 generator onto the expo. I don't know if there's any way that in the infrastructure that you could tap into that and get power from that generator, because basically it's only gonna be used in emergency, so it has to run anyhow to keep it working. So I mean, if you could use it for a week somehow by putting infrastructure in there, it would be beneficial to us to run it and for you to get the generator. It's a big expense to the county, but we need it in case we need it for an emergency facility.
Will that run like the entire grounds? I mean, will that be Or just the Expo building, just the
No,
building.
it's just the expo, and I don't know if it's even gonna be the full expo building, they're still in the design phases.
Not to keep light.
So exactly.
Knowing how
Capacity's
the
gonna be.
emergency generators work with buildings, there's no way that you would have to put in all new switch gear to, just to adapt.
Transfer switch and stuff, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm sure facilities would access. I mean, they're just not practical. You'd have to buy a $50,000 transfer switch to do that.
But it's $800,000 generator, and I don't know what you pay to rent your generator. You know, like, the highway got a generator, and it runs once a month, it's never been really used in an emergency, and they switched it out already. So it's like, we buy $800,000 generator, and there's a good chance in 20 years it'll never be used. You know, so I don't know what you pay to rent generators, but over the course of the next 15 years, $50,000 might be cheap to basically use the generator that the county has, and the generators you're renting, you know, they're basically maybe $50,000 generators. This is 800,000, it has to put out quite a bit of power, I would think, for that kind of money.
Yeah, definitely something we can look at, and we'll talk to our friends at Faith and see.
Part of the concept of the next phase, and doing that main parking lot, is we would look. To potentially add some power along the fence line along Y. Maybe putting in some more permanent camping pedestals down there. Around the perimeter of the blacktop lot, we're gonna have light poles, security cameras. So we could potentially look at, you know, doing some power distribution there as well, maybe not permanent posts, but we could look at least having a connection point. Where we could spider off of there for outlet boxes that could be used for the campers. Just a couple of the thoughts that are in there, but you know, we'll start designing that next year. Look at some of those ideas and
Yeah, we're excited if, you know, if that all becomes a hard surface, you know, how to change our layout. We've been. Not limited by, but we've always been into that. Goofy triangular shaped section with the layout, and having it squared off, I think will be super helpful and convenient as far as how to lay camping out and things like that. I don't know if it necessarily adds to the numbers, but it allows us to lay it out cleaner. One of the things that I know, you know, we've been talking about is as you guys look at how you're gonna lay out the new blacktop area, we'd love to be in those conversations, because the last thing we'd want to do is have a brand new blacktop and not be able to put tent stakes in it, or what, you know, we don't want to wreck any, you know, we don't want to incur a big expense to fix blacktop. So as we look at how we would lay things out and how you guys are gonna do it, to be at least involved in some of those conversations would be great.
yeah, that's the plan was like, especially you guys and county fair, that program that blacktop and more. You know, and making sure that it's viable for everyone without having to incur additional costs or repairs. So yeah, you guys will definitely be involved with those discussions once we get to that point.
Because I know like the camping pedestal that are currently in the gravel on the north side of in the grass on the north side of the blacktop there. I know we pull out of the breaker panel and run spiders as opposed to using the power that's on the blocks. But like you said, having a big distribution panel either on the north and possibly the west side of that lot. Would allow us to, you know, not have to drop a generator there where we can tie in and it makes distribution a lot easier. And a lot cleaner, and then we're not, you know, every generator in the city of Oshkosh requires 2 grounding rods. So you gotta drive 2 things in within 6 feet of the generator, so that leads into where you have to place things. As we look at it, you know, we can't be in certain areas and that kind of stuff, so. Water would be the other big thing, somewhere in that blacktop area. As food vendors, I know the county fair is in the same boat, we're always pulling off of the expo building. Running hose, you know, 300 feet to get to the food vendors, because they all need water. So, water specifically on the north side of the lot and possibly again on the west side. I know there's spigots over there, but right now it's, you know, 300 feet of grass or 300 feet of blacktop to get to the middle, wherever you're at on there, so.
Josh or Jimmy, everything?
I guess my one question is, like ballpark for what you think, like fixing that clay and then putting the rock down, like, or I guess time frame wise. Like, are you guys trying to hustle on that, or is it like, I guess, is this a while before we really get into that?
the sooner the better.
Yeah.
Or something like that, because once you redo it all, it's gonna settle. You've got to give the grass preferably like 2 years to grow in and root in nice and good before you want to drive a ton of vehicles on it. Otherwise, you just risk killing it. So anytime we're looking at that, and it really hasn't come up because of all the other construction that we have to do prior to that. I don't know, if we've done up any numbers on that, on how much square footage it is. You know, it's gotta be engineered for drainage and stuff. There are a couple of drain systems back there. But I don't know if we've run any numbers on that yet. But 2 years is kind of the viability of it to make sure that it's sustainable.
I know 2019 when we put the first road in, I believe the quote from Pfeiffer for rock was like 50K, so. It's gonna be double or triple that now, so I mean, it's just in rock alone is probably $150,000 to $200,000 investment. And most of that is trucking, so as diesel fuel continues to go up. I know we saw a $50,000 increase in our diesel fuel bill last year. Not a $50,000 diesel fuel bill, a $50,000 increase in our diesel fuel. Oh man, we burn about 15,000 gallons of diesel throughout the course of the weekend.
If you look on that map there, maybe if you could zoom in on that, Adam, a little more.
See how much.
On the back,
So you gotta start getting blurry.
So you can kind of see on that right-hand side, just below the cursor there, that's where the gravel stops. So you'd go north from that point up to the back side. Kind of where all that runs now is just clay. So you'd be looking to put a road structure in at that point, filling in that whole center with topsoil, proper drainage.
That's huge then, that's a lot, that's a big project.
Yeah, it's easily gonna be probably $400,000, I would guess. Pretty quick. Like I said, a lot of it is gonna be the trucking costs of bringing in, you know, topsoil and stone.
You guys just stacked all that on that one berm.
Yeah, I tried getting that somewhere else, but that did best. But it is it is a potential source.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for the presentation.
Great.
Give us an update.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, we're excited for 23 here.
Item,
All praise for good weather.
Yeah. It can rain on Friday once everybody's in, but anything before that, I guess it's, you know. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Sure.
okay, item 6, discussion, resolution number 239-11-2021. Support the state of Wisconsin's efforts to provide funding opportunities for navigational buoys located within Winnebago system. And update, Ethan. is there to-
So I think there's actually 3 new committee members since this resolution passed. So how familiar are the 3 new members with the navigational buoys? What, do you know what we're talking about here?
No, it'd be great to have an update.
Well, I know what they are, but I don't know what our update.
Okay,
I thought they had just hired somebody different to take them and paint them and put them.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about as far as.
so these are the red and primarily, we're talking about the red and the green buoys, the navigational buoys, and primarily through Lake Winneconne and Poygan is where the majority of them are on the system. What they do is they mark the river. If you know anything about Poygan and Winneconne and Butamore, the lakes are not naturally that large. They are marsh that have been flooded through damming about 140 years ago. So what the buoys do is that is for navigation purposes, they mark the river so that the deep spots are known to the boaters. In Winneconne, Lake Winneconne on the north side particularly, it's between a foot and 2 feet in spots, and we do have boats that probably once a year run aground, particularly at night. There was a significant one, I don't know, 2020, there was a wooden boat that ran aground and they left it for a couple days. And so we have 97 of these, something like that, buoys, depending on the year. And prior to 2022, they were funded with our boat launch fees. Depending on the year, they can range from $40,000 to $100,000 in maintenance and placement. the county board passed a resolution asking for the state to pay for those navigational buoy efforts. The logic being, if you put them on the buoys, it's only the people who are paying the county to put their boat in the water. Put them on the property tax, it's only the people who have property that are paying for the buoys. So the logic is we would go after what's called program revenue in the DNR, which would be the registration fees of the boats. So the DNR would cost share with us. There was a bill drafted, not the way I would have drafted it, primarily because it went after, I think, the wrong account. But we had a public hearing on it in the assembly. And unfortunately, the committee chair represents Oneida County. And there was another member who had represented kind of the Superior, basically the top northwest part of the state. They all have counties that have navigational buoys, and they wouldn't necessarily qualify for the way the bill was written. So what we're doing is working as best we can with DNR to see if there is program or segment funding available to this. I'm not optimistic we can necessarily find that because if the DNR is trying to become more and more self-sufficient, get out of the general purpose revenue business. And so the more program revenue of programs occur, the bigger fight that they tend to put up. And so we're looking at a budget amendment. If the governor doesn't put anything in his budget, which we don't think he will, typically governors don't do these types of projects. We would ask for what's called a budget amendment to see if we can go after some program revenue to an account. Not sure. I don't think it would be 100%. The bill that was drafted was up to 100%. I don't think we would get that. But we're just kind of navigating kind of what our ask is with Representative Swearingen, who represents, there's 2 counties in the state that have 25% of their county covered in water. It's Oneida County and us. So that's the chain, that's the Manitowish chain, if you know where that is. So that's kind of where we're at with that. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it, kind of technically what's going on. So our strategy that we asked for an amendment when that resolution was written to be more flexible in the policy. The original resolution had asked us to support specifically the legislation that was drafted. But we had asked for flexibility to go after program revenue and figure out how to negotiate this. So now we're in the negotiation phase. One of the members who opposed the bill is no longer in the legislature. And so seeing where his folks are, there's 2 senators and a representative that care about the Oneida chain. So.
Any questions for Ethan? Thanks for the update, Ethan. Item 7, discussion action, changes to park and recreation ordinance 19.23 camping overnight mooring.
All right, so last month, because this is such a comprehensive change, we brought it to the committee for discussion. Had a lot of good discussion on this particular ordinance change. Did some changes, did some more research. So I'm just going to highlight a few things. So first of all, I know one of the things we discussed was the fire pits. I did get a hold of the city of Oshkosh. So when it comes to commercial, or I should say, I got a hold of the Oshkosh Fire Department with when it comes to commercial or institutional, basically their permit right now is just for residential. So they said they recommend to follow National Fire Code type things. And basically what we would do is work with the Oshkosh Fire Department to work on our internal rules for anything with fire pits. But so from a standpoint of needing to get a permit or anything like that, we don't have to worry about that. I did also do some more, Rick and I did some more legwork into the camping fee. We are proposing a $40 and a $45 per day. I did some, so as you recall, we went through Rick put together, a lot of numbers in regards to our utility fees from last year and are actually really back through 2019. And just to, when looking at those fees, when looking at those fees, the average, so our lot 2, lot 3, and lot 4, which are our main electrical camping lots. We had those up and running, by June, and lot 3 by July. And so the average cost per day, now what I did basically, well, average cost per lot per day is for lot 2 is $15.50. Lot 3 is $17.90, and lot 4 is $8.46, $8.46, $15.91, or $15.55. So then taking Rick's camping layout and how many campers fit in each lot, broke that up even further. And basically per camper per day, it's 80 cents per day or 66 cents per day if it's lot 4. So lot 2 and 3 is 80 cents. But so just to kind of give you an idea of the cost of utilities. We did look at comparables, camping at High Cliff, electrical camping, no water, or water hookup directly, is $40 per night. Life Fest, theirs is $130 per night, and then Air Venture is $84 per day. Now Air Venture, the big thing with them is they do include water in theirs. Now just keep that in mind. We don't have any water on our site. So obviously Life Fest is high compared to what we're proposing. I would argue though, like John kind of mentioned, they have 30,000 people. They have people. We would be renting this facility or renting these campsites at this point for things like Air Venture, where we're not on Air Venture property. You're obviously we're within a 5-10 minute drive, which is obviously a bonus. But we don't obviously have the demand of you can just walk to the site. You still have to get in your car and drive over there. We don't have water, so we don't have some of those amenities. So we stuck closer to the High Cliff State Park with the idea that we can always reevaluate the fees, obviously in the future. If we're seeing really good positive, we try to do Air Venture this year and we try to offer it. And we receive it's sold out and we have a waiting list and everyone, obviously we would go back to the drawing board and make sure that we have the correct price. But from a standpoint of our costs and then a standpoint of the comparables in the area, we thought that was a good price. Otherwise, within the ordinance, not a lot of other big changes. One thing I will say, if you go to, and I apologize because it's red line, so it's a little confusing on where to go to, but if you go to page 2 of Exhibit A, you go down to W where it's crossed out and it's in blue, or U, because I think I printed yours in color, perfect. It's at the bottom of page 2 where it starts with pets are permitted. I apologize, Corp Council got this edit to me a little late, so I would have this in there for personal and finance, because with the fee, this should have to go to personal and finance, I believe. But pets are permitted within the campgrounds, and she just suggests instead of to the exclusion of, to do but for BUTFOR. So if we do pass this along, I would propose that we change that language, and that's just a formality thing that Corp Council sees as beneficial.
What number or letter is pets?
I apologize, it's the W crossed out or U. It's gonna be U
Oh, down the line.
when it's all changed and edited. But I know we keep the red line in so that way the committees and boards can see what it was and what it's changing to. So I apologize, there's a lot of colors on this. So if it's crossed out, that means it's gonna be eliminated. If it's underlined, that means it's gonna be, I guess you could say, added in, or it is a change. More than likely, it's an add. So I guess I would turn it over. Those are the highlights, I think, from last meeting that we spoke about. I did, oh no, that's never mind. I apologize. The extra handouts for shelter, so we'll get that later. So. Any questions on these changes? Otherwise, it'll go to personnel and finance and then to the county board in February.
First, I need a motion to accept the changes to Park and Recreation Ordinance 19.23, camping overnight moving. Supervisor Bender, second by
I'll second.
Josh. Now we can discussion. Anyone, any questions? And act them now.
I was looking, because I was just reading the thing about the pets, must be kept on a leash. And what the penalty is, okay. If the order leaves letting you, okay. Put you to citation. Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Pass the voice vote. Item 8, discussion action, community park shelter.
All right, and so this one we did bring up last month as well, but as we mentioned last month, there's. When we went through it, we would have liked to have this done a little sooner in the year. But we wanted to make sure we got the correct comparables. And we're able to get a little bit more information. So I did provide you with 2 handouts. I apologize for in your packet. One is just the fee study we did last time, which was in your packet last time. Or we handed it out last time. And then the other one is, I know there was a question last time of what are how many shelter rentals do we have? In terms of soccer versus pavilion. So Justin put that together on this sheet that just has just the square in the upper left corner. It also states how many rentals of over 50 people or over 150 people, because as you recall, shelters 1, 2, pavilion and soccer, we have a fee as of right now that over 150 people, it's a higher fee, all the way up to special events. You can see in 2022, we had 0 that said they had over 150 people. Other than this doesn't account for like the rentals, the special event rentals. So like the Hmong Memorial and Labor Day festivals, Super Soccer Saturday, those ones. And then rentals over 50 people for shelters 3 and 4, we had 4 people indicate that they were to be over 50 people. So you can see it's very minimal in regards to the amount of people that really we're capturing in terms of these extra costs for 51 to 300 people or 151 to 300 people, 301 to 1,000, and then over 1,000. Once again, the only one that's not captured in this is the over 1,000 because Life Fest, Hmong Festival, all of those ones. If they're gonna take that parking lot and basically take over a shelter, they pay for the shelter at that special event fee. So I supplied those statistics. On Exhibit A, which is the one with the nice colorful red again, I do have one correction in there. On the black underneath the big graph. Actually, you know what? I'll put this up on the TV rather than trying to show you my little this spot right here. There was a typo. I apologize. I already had the change in there. This, as it currently stands per ordinance, is a $100 deposit. In its discretion of the director. Justin and Tom and myself have been discussing deposits over the last couple of months. At this point, we're not proposing that we're going to do a consistent deposit. It is in ordinance that we have the ability to do it. However, I think $100 when you're only paying 65 or 45 or even $100 for the shelter is a lot for a deposit. And so even a $25 deposit for any extra cleaning. So that is what we're proposing, is to change it from $100 to $25. So that's another change. I apologize that I would make for personal finance and beyond. So you can kind of see what we're proposing is to go from this fee structure on the top end to this fee structure on the bottom, make it much more simple, clear, concise. The fees for the small shelters, they're the slightly bigger shelters, 1 and 2. We'd be going off the weekend fee, but increasing it by $5 to just continue to keep up with markets. So $65 for a standard fee. We wouldn't have a weekend versus weekday rental fee. And then shelters 3 and 4 going from 40 to 45. The pavilion going from 145 to 150, that same $5 increase. And then the soccer shelter is the one that we, that kind of spurred the study to get it done as quickly as we did. The average shelter rental of comparable type in the area when we have on your spreadsheet, when we have the 8 comparables, is $95.63. So we did round up, like we've been doing with the $5 to the $100 for the soccer shelter. Now, special event fees, we did not propose to change shelters 1, 2, 3, 4, or pavilion, because it does take a lot of extra effort to put on special events. We did lower the soccer shelter one in the same amount that we lowered the fee, if that makes. So we were $225 going down to 100, we lowered it by $125, just to reflect that same change. Obviously, any of these are subject to change if committee doesn't agree with this layout, but this was kind of the thought process that we went off of, Justin and I, as we worked through this. And I believe that should be, if any questions.
Who's gonna be a motion to get this on the
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Which moved by, Supervisor Bender, second by
A second.
Dodge. Discussion, any questions?
I'll just make a comment. I think it's good that we go with the special event fee. I mean, the Monk Festival has 2 festivals here a year. They don't use it, that shelter. So it actually gets no use and they were paying $550. The bathrooms in there cannot take the amount of people. The lift station can't pump the sewage. So the bathrooms are unusable if you get a lot of people. They'll plug up. So they elect not to use that because they don't want to be stuck with the cost of basically toilets that are over full and, you know, so most big festivals that actually have a large crowd don't use that building at all. So we're charging them $550 for a building they weren't using because it isn't designed to take that amount of sewage. So I think it's nice that we basically took 125 off. And it had basically very little rental because we were charging so much for it. And we paid $350,000 to build that building and we're never renting it. It's a beautiful building that most people would love to have a family gathering there. It's got a kitchen in there. It's got a nice overhead where you can maybe sit 50, 60 people for a, you know, family gathering. So I think it'll get used and that was the purpose of building it, was to let the community use it at a reasonable cost. So I'm happy we did that.
No, Josh, Jim, Karen? You're not, all in favor, say by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? I don't even. Um, 9, discussion at your property annexation process overview.
I will, I'll just go over my memo and then I know, Chairman Norton, asked for this to be on the agenda, so then I'll turn it over to him, but I'll just kind of explain, some of the information I gathered for the committee, so that way you had something to discuss. So there's a few different, let me go to the map, I think, just so it's probably a little bit easier. I should have all the other stuff. I shouldn't have to refer, well, I can refer to my memo here. So the 3 properties I know we've been mostly talking about 2 properties, but I wanted to make sure you had information on all 3 properties, or really, I guess, 4 properties, parcels, I should say parcels. So that way you're aware kind of what we're talking about. These ones highlighted in yellow or gold are within the town of Oshkosh. So this is the BMX track that we toured this earlier this year. This is, or last year, sorry. This is the Netzer property that we were talking about quite a bit when John was here and he was talking about parking, and this is the Netzer Nature Preserve up here. And then this is the Netzer house down here and the community garden down here. The Netzer property is divided into 2 parcels because they were bought separately at separate times. So just so you're aware, now all 3 of these properties are owned by the by Winnebago County. They're within the town of Oshkosh. So when you look at the potential of annexing something, what that essentially means is you're bringing from the town of Oshkosh into the city of Oshkosh, or whatever city or village, and in this case, it is Oshkosh. When you go through that process, there's a few things that you need to do. We work with basically the city. It's roughly an 8-week timeline. If a property is along a roadway that has water, you are required to do water hookup immediately, even if you're going to still use your well. It's a requirement from the city. So just a rough figure that they put together, just because obviously, we haven't done a lot of talking about this, or they didn't have a lot of time, but they said roughly $25,000 with the square footage we have on county-wide would be the water hookup fee. The annexation goes to the state for state review, and the state ultimately also approves of annexations. That is about a $3,000 to $4,000 cost. And I'm just talking about this parcel here. This parcel to the north wouldn't require a water hookup fee because this parcel would already be connected to an existing city of Oshkosh parcel. And then this parcel over here, I do not believe they have, I think it would be a similar fee. I can't remember if they have water in here. I know they don't have sewer on Jackson or on Y, so there is no sewer at this point, city sewer.
No water on 76.
On 76, okay, so yeah, so there's no fee at this time. They said the fee would, eventually down the road, though, once water is on Jackson. And you can see the right of way is pretty similar in width to, right of way down here, so you're probably looking at a similar $25,000 fee. So that's kind of the water aspect of it, the cost to the state when you go through the annexation process. The other factor that you have to look into is ERUs, which is stormwater credits. So when you annex into the city, there's more stringent, as you may know, with when we developed the property over here with the city of Oshkosh, we put in some storm ponds. Now, obviously, we put them in for our own benefit to retain water, but we also were required to put in so much pond, or like we're doing at Grunman, we don't have a pond, but we have those biofilters that are going to filter the water. Basically, we have to put in some sort of stormwater feature that's going to filter the water before it makes it to a river or a lake source. And that's based off of how much impervious surface you have. So impervious surface is gravel or asphalt or buildings. So obviously we added more gravel, so we need to do that. So turning over to the Netzer property, we do have a building. Now granted, we're looking to probably take that building down, most likely. We do have a roadway, or so we do have some area that we'd have to pay for ERUs, or pay for stormwater fees to the city. So that would be more of a yearly cost, like on our water bill, is where the stormwater is added. Up here to the north of this parcel, it's all grass. So really, how that would play a part into it is if we do any of those roadways on that northern parcel, or we have any sort of gravel roadways or impervious up there down the road, if we were in the city of Oshkosh, we would have to pay for that. And then also through the development process, keep in mind, if we do develop the property while we're within the city, we would also be required to, and you still require with the DNR to do some of this work, like building a pond or building stormwater management areas. It's just a little bit more strict when you're within the city. Now, over here, I know we were talking more about the east end, but over here on the west end, you can see there's a lot more impervious. So if this is ever annexed into the city of Oshkosh, we have buildings, we have tracks, a lot of impervious surface, so there would be obviously a lot more stormwater fees over here. And they said they could get us those estimated fees, that we just didn't have the time between the last meeting and this meeting and then to supply us with those fees. Let me just go back up to my memo to make sure I catch everything. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think I pretty much caught everything. One other big thing. If we were to annex, so when you annex a property from town to city or town to village, you can't create what's called islands. So what you can see over here on the, let's start on the west end. The west end over here, this is all the town of Oshkosh, but because the right of way in the road is still in the town or state, you're not creating an island by annexing this property, because if we annex this property, the question is, are we creating an island for these town properties? Basically, is the city surrounding town property, and we're not, because there's still this roadway. The right of way is not in the city. What you'll notice is the difference here is this yellow line is the city, right, or is the city versus town. The city owns the right of way, or it's within the right, I shouldn't say own, but it's within the right of way, their right of way on County Road Y. So what ends up happening is if we annex this property, for instance, we are now, and we annex this property, so we're essentially wrapping our properties around to County Road Y. Now we are creating an island for the YMCA. This is the YMCA here, the tennis court facility across the street. If we do that, they would potentially be forced to come into the city of Oshkosh as well and have that same $25,000 fee. So it's just something to be aware of, that obviously as neighbors, we would want to have any discussions with them if there's ever a consideration to do this, because it's going to be cost to them, obviously. Yeah, so I mean, that's that's all the, I guess, the facts and the data on what annexing is, what it would do to our three properties here. Like I mentioned, you can annex one property, not other properties. So there's definitely, it's not like an all or nothing. We have to do all three properties. I just wanted to, while we were at it, I just wanted to show you all three properties, show you what's in the city versus the town. And really just kind of give you a big picture with all the information.
The one thing I would add, that 8 to 10 weeks is from the moment the city really receives our petition. So you have to add county board action time and staff time to do the petition. So you're not talking 8 to 12 weeks, you're talking probably 16 to 20 weeks total time at breakneck speed. I mean, a petition, putting an annexing petition could take planning and zoning and parks a month. I mean, we don't pass the resolution and the petition moves on. When I was in Washington County, I went through an annexation property. The other thing is some of the impact fees that Adam's talking about, we could negotiate. That the city, if the city wants, for example, you cannot petition annexation to a city if you're not adjacent to the city. So if the city wants to grow north, and there's no boundary agreement with the town of Oshkosh, which is the other thing that's important. If we say to the city, well, we're not paying your impact fee because you now can get closer out towards 41, they might be willing to do that. And so there are situations where now Oshkosh is less, they are very much by that we don't make exceptions. But, there would be a argument we could make to say, if you really want, say, County Road A, that property on A, to eventually be annexed or get closer and up, we would only petition if we don't have to pay. And so you can horse trade a little bit on an annexation petition. But I would say 4 months, by the time we actually, if we were going breakneck speed to be done.
With PMI, can they make the fireworks display work if the town of Oshkosh does not sign that special event permit? Or is this a must for that event to happen here?
So town of Oshkosh, and maybe I should have reordered some things, but town of Oshkosh is holding a public hearing on February 8th for the PGI fireworks permit. Following that, February 8th, public hearing is what they're doing. They're gonna hold a town board meeting immediately after February 8th, right after the public hearing. They are then gonna vote on the fireworks permit, and I was informed by the town chair that whatever the town chair signs off what yes or no on a fireworks permit, it's there in town code, it's there, they can say yes or no. He informed me that whatever the town board votes, yes or no, he's going to sign it yes or no, whatever the town board votes in this case. So that all being said, just to give you a picture of kind of what our timeline is, really February 8th, Rick, myself, I know County Executive Office, CBB, we're gonna go to this public hearing, PGI will be there as well. And they're gonna present their layout and their plan and why they're utilizing this property, why they utilize this property. They are working on backups if it's possible. It's definitely a little bit more difficult. It's not ideal. It's not priority, or it's not option one in terms of the best spectator and the best, the cheapest and the best route for both the promoter and the county to make sure to get the most revenue, to have the least amount of cost. It would be utilizing the portion of this property. We're looking at ideas up here. It's very rough up here. That's the biggest problem. Whereas over here, it's just open farm field, a lot safer, honestly, too, when you're like, now fireworks, a lot less brush around you. We can mow it. We do mow it. We mow this property with our tractor mower. So we can make sure it's a lot. There's a lot of reasons from a safety standpoint and a logistical standpoint as to why they're definitely working on backups to try. So that way, just in case. But ideally, we want to be over there.
Can we amend this that if the town of Oshkosh rejects our special event permit, then we annex into the city of Oshkosh? I mean, if they're willing to let us have the event, there's no need for us to annex into the city of Oshkosh. But if they say no, then this is gonna be an ongoing problem in the future, and the costs are just gonna get greater. It's gonna cost $50,000 to hook up in 10 years, where it's 25 today. I mean, do I want to spend the money? No. But if they want to say, no, we're not going to give you a special events permit, then I don't think we have any choice but to annex, because it's going to continue over and over. They're going to control that land and what we do with it. So I would make a motion to amend this that if the town of Oshkosh rejects their special event permit, we proceed in annexing into the city of Oshkosh.
We don't have an action item, but, beyond PGI, that's why we're looking at this, because is there a scenario? We know this in other places in the city. That Ford Festival Park is in multiple jurisdictions, EAA is in multiple jurisdictions, our airport's in multiple jurisdictions, and it causes problems from a permit perspective.
Would you
So
recommend that we should just annex to the city? I'm for annexing to the city. If you recommend that, I won't withdraw my motion. If you think it's worth seeing what they're gonna. I know at the last meeting, we didn't have any representation there. That's what I heard, that Adam wasn't there, the county exec wasn't there, he was at the town or the city council meeting. What I did hear from one of the supervisors there, that we were gonna have representation there this time, and they were open to listening to our, so do we just shut them down and annex now, or do we just give them till the 8th, and if they turn us down on the 8th, then we annex into the city? Because I don't want to see this event not happen, and I don't want to see it, if they want to come back in 4 years, not happen again. We can make between $75,000 and $100,000 on this. And even if it costs us $30,000 or $35,000 to annex in the city, it's still a benefit to the people of Winnebago County and the Parks Department. So I'm open either way, whatever you want to recommend.
John supports your logic that, if it's gonna be a hindrance to host events, it makes sense to annex. In this case, this is a little more nuanced. I don't know that they've ever had a record, Tom and Rick, of ever having noise issues or trying to pass ordinances to prevent events. In this specific case, by statute, the town chairman has to do the firework permit. So is there a time where we'd ever want to put fireworks on the west property for something else and they want to deny it? Maybe. Is there a time where a different town chairman wants to do a different noise ordinance? Maybe. So from a service perspective, John supports the logic of having it all in one jurisdiction. One thing we told PGI in a call was, can we do this all on the city of Oshkosh property? We can do it all on the city of Oshkosh property, but it will potentially prohibit public display nights and things like that. So to do what they want, we need the city of Oshkosh's cooperation. I think the threat of annexation has gotten that cooperation more than we had maybe a month ago.
Now, and the one other thing to consider is we could go a route where it has a minimal impact to us. At this point, we could just look at this north property. So there would be no cost. I mean, there would be the state cost still. We still have to, and if there's any minor city fees working with their planning department for just the process. But you wouldn't have a water hookup fee if you just do this north property too. That would be, and then you're not worried about the YMCA as well, who obviously would be put into a situation all of a sudden. Whereas I think reaching out to them and giving, I'm not sure if where their wells at right now, and that type of stuff too, in terms of the YMCA, because that is just another factor, is we do have a neighbor that we just at least want to be aware of. But this north property would connect to the city, and in theory, if we had any issues on February 8th, that's at least an option.
I guess I'm open to your recommendations.
I got a few questions. I understand what this is all about. When the number for that property, where we wouldn't have to pay for that water.
Yeah, that's
How does that eliminate the town chairman from stopping us from the fireworks?
so as of right now.
Step on that.
Yeah, so as of right now, and I'll draw a box here, as of right now, the fireworks launching area is roughly this. This is where they need the amount of space or the distance they're not necessarily using this whole width, but they need distance between certain size shells and certain size fireworks. So they need to go back pretty far into the Netzer property to be able to go to little bigger shells and to be able to put on the displays that they normally put on. So right now, we have a city permit approved for fireworks and for the event itself, which does include up to the city property line, which is this yellow line. So anything past it here requires town. That's why there's a fireworks permit with the town, because there needs to be 2 fireworks permits because they're being lit off in 2 separate entities.
I got you.
All of our seating would then be here, like our, so if, to that point, if all of a sudden now this area has to be used all for fireworks, where do people sit and watch it? There's no revenue to be for us to have. Unless we can do something up in here, but it's pretty rough and we have to walk up there and see what's going on up there.
Okay, I got you, but my question. That's the cheapest way of going.
Correct.
And then the town chairman, he's. Out of luck.
They'd object to, they can't, but they would try to object to the annexation. They'd probably have people go to city council saying reject the annexation and. But there's nothing they would do. It's a unanimous annexation, which is property owner and city agree. There's no boundary agreement. Boundary agreement being towns and municipalities frequently will sign agreements phasing in annexations. Town of Oshkosh didn't do that when everybody else did in the county. So it's a pretty easy annexation process. To avoid one permit, is annexation the way to go? Probably not. But we just talked about Life Fest using that property. We have another event that's gonna be using that property in May. For staffing and other purposes, having one set of rules, annexation makes sense. So doing it just for PGI probably doesn't make sense. Doing it for the good of having the same rules probably makes sense. So our recommendation from the county executive's perspective is wait till February 8th.
Okay, then is the entire county park. In the city of Oshkosh.
Yeah, the county park
Now
is
that's.
Yep.
That's key. Nobody brought that up. So the other one off from Jackson, that's in what township? Township of Oshkosh or that's.
this one you're saying right here.
Yeah. Who
That
owns
is in the town. Yep, oh, sorry, these yellow lines are the city, so you can kind of see this yellow line here. It goes to city and then it does cross the road and then we're in the city across the road.
All right. And then the YMCA would
Then why
be forced into it.
if both, if both of these parcels. This one and this one, because then it creates an island. And you can't have an island.
Yeah, but we don't want to fall under. Have a piece of property where you have to follow different rules for
Right.
different ends of the lot, so to
Right,
speak.
my
That
last
makes
point
more
was, I think it would just make a lot of sense to make sure we speak with the YMCA before you would ever go down that route. So that way, I mean, because that's a big cost for a nonprofit, obviously too, and maybe there's negotiation with the city too, potentially for them, but otherwise, I mean, 25,000. Is a lot for a nonprofit, obviously, as well. So, and I agree with everything Ethan said and what's coming from the county executive office, to answer your question too. For one event, I don't think it's necessarily best practice, to do something like annexation for one event. However, down the road with multiple events and that type of thing, if it becomes a situation where it is cleaner and obviously easier if down the road we're to start utilizing that property for more of our events. Obviously, right now, it's only used for the community garden pretty much. Other than now, we do have an event coming in May too, so.
Sure.
And so if we wanted to annex that else shape, we can't do it because we created an island for the YMCA.
We can do it, it's just, we have to understand what we're doing, that it creates an island, and then the city would address that with the YMCA.
And then what would be the benefit for the YMCA to stay in the town of Oshkosh as opposed to Oshkosh proper? Is there any advantage?
Cost. I mean,
What's the cost?
well,
I mean,
so the $25,000 hookup fee. And then right now, they don't have to probably pay stormwater fees or very minimal. I'm not sure if the town of Oshkosh has much, but the city has higher water fees. So then because they have a building, they have a parking lot, they'd have to pay. And then if they do any improvements, just like when we do improvements, they have to make sure they add stormwater features. Which it just affects your cost when you're doing improvements to your facilities.
Okay.
So it's just,
I
yeah,
think that we couldn't annex if we made some piece of property an island, but you're saying we could make them an island, although.
no,
What were you saying?
that's exactly the point, is that we can't annex and nothing happened to the YMCA. The YMCA would have to come into the city. And obviously the city would have to work through those details with the YMCA. We can't, my point is that if both these properties go into the city, the YMCA has to come into the city as well.
Yeah, okay.
But we'd be kind of forcing the issue on the YMCA
And is it
This
any
is something to
cheaper
be
to
aware
add, for the two of us to go in together? I mean, obviously, you have the bigger,
based
the
off
bigger
square
prop,
footage.
it's what?
It's
Okay.
based off square footage, unless there was some sort of negotiation potential that by having more properties, that gives us more negotiating power. I can't speak to that.
And I would think that as the big dog in this play with that much property, that we could help the YMCA with those things, if there were that whole rectangle instead of the L, we're going in. It seems like it'd be more cost effective and we could,
They base it off the square footage in part of your property, so it's still gonna be the same cost to YMCA, whether or not we would go with them or they would. Do it, whether or not they would just tell the city tomorrow, hey, we want to annex into the city. Without us, yeah, I mean, one thing I didn't mention, the other benefit, obviously, and the reason why a lot of residential properties will move into a village or city. Is your well starting to go, and now you need to look at replacing your well, there's city water right outside on the road. It's usually more cost effective for you to hook up to city water at that point than to replace your well. So I'm not sure what kind of condition the YMCA as well is in right now. But that's typically a reason that drives a lot of people to annex into a city or village.
have you talked about this at all with Jen?
I'm guessing you're talking about with YMCA?
Yeah,
No, I have not reached, because this was brought up so recently, I have
Okay.
not. And this hadn't been discussed here, I had not brought anything up with the YMCA yet.
okay,
We can create a town island, it just complicates things.
yeah.
I mean, there's.
I know
Basically, we'd have to, the county board would have to force a town boundary agreement and do other things and potentially payment in lieu of taxes, and there's all kinds of reasons why we don't want that, but that 8 to 10 weeks becomes 6 months. But town islands aren't prohibited, they're just discouraged and a very high hurdle.
We don't vote though that annex this, we're really gonna get close, cause it just takes 4 months. So you take back up 4 months, that's gonna take us into basically sometime in May,
It's too late for PGI this year.
you know.
PGI will either have to get approved on February 7th or use the city property. Because they need to have, by March, they need to be ready to go. So if you're doing this for PGI, it's too late already. But if you're mad at the town for ignoring your, for not doing the permit, moving forward could.
Well, I'm
encourage
not mad
that.
at the town, I'm just trying to, for future events.
Right.
I think we should annex that one spot that basically doesn't cost us hardly nothing into the city. And that way in the future, we basically, if we get a special event permit, that
They're done.
one area at least is useful for now, and it doesn't cost us anything because we're not planning on doing anything with it. But if we would have been in there, say, when we purchased the property, right now, we wouldn't be in this problem. So I would make a motion that we annex that one section, one way or the other into the city of Oshkosh. So that in the future, if Life Fest or whoever wants to have use of that property, they only have to get one special events permit. Right now, you have to get 2. And there's no cost to us, right? Or minimal.
Well, there
$2,000.
would be cost with the state. Yeah, and I'm not sure if there's just administrative cost with the city or not, but. He said 3,000 to 4,000 with the state. Is what he ballparked.
So for this year, the fireworks. Gonna be on. It's gonna be outside, it's gonna be on the city
It
property.
depends what the,
It depends on if the town, so,
Well,
worst
you can't
case
predict what they're gonna say, they might have that
Well, we can't,
feeling
do-
that we're gonna. Give you the screws.
we can't do anything until February. And we can't take any action because we didn't any action on the agenda, so we wait till February. That's the earliest we do any action.
I mean, I would encourage, if you have any interest in finding out, during the public hearing, come to the public hearing on the 8th, it's at 6, I think. Rick, myself, and county executive office will be there, and
That's on a Wednesday.
PGI will be there. Actually, they're flying in from Texas, to come for this, so. Yeah, last time it was just very short notice. For instance, I had family stuff already going on. I found out about it on Thursday, the Monday before.
And that takes place at the firehouse, I take it.
Actually, they already had, due to the timing of everything, they already had something scheduled there. It's actually at the Coughlin. Is it Coughlin? Because we were. We thought I threw that out as a suggestion because we thought, PGI, we might have to zoom in. So because of being across the country, and even still, they have board members across the country, and obviously we're gonna let them know with this, so that way they can log in. But I know for sure the one from Appleton is driving down here. He's not technically on the board. He's one of their operations guys. And then their director of operations or their staff member, they really only have one staff member because they're an organization. Or not, yeah, basically, point is that she's flying from Texas to come here to that night.
All right, that's for this year,
So,
but all in all. Is it advantageous that we have it all in a city instead of Park City, Park Township? No, that's what I'm asking.
you know, Rick, do you have any operational thoughts on that? You know, one thing I will say is if we only do the north side, I know some of our, you know, when we talk about future plans with this property and parking, obviously we talk about, and even the May event, there's some items that are happening down here and that's in the town. You know, so you're still kind of split if you only do one or the other. Obviously for PGI specific, yeah, at this point, they're using this. The Baja event in May, they're using this. So, you know, it's.
And all these events have to have their permission.
No,
Ah,
that's exact, so. If it's site contained, we basically don't really even need city permission for the most part. The biggest reason why these are getting permits, number one, is because we're gonna be using the county park and need police and fire for crossing County Y and some of that kind of stuff. And then number two, the most important is if they have fireworks. So there's a specific fireworks permit with the city and there's a fireworks permit with the town. And so that is why typically, no, we don't need to get a town permit for something. For an event, because there's just not as many. Rules. Or regulations with the town. It's specifically the fireworks portion of this event. That's the only thing they're approving. They're not approving. Whether or not people can cross County Y, they're not approving. Just people being on the property, they are simply approving, can you light off fireworks or can you on February 8th?
I've been here for 7 years. This is the first time I recall needing a town of Oshkosh permit. And the only reason is because there's fireworks on the town of Oshkosh property.
Hmm.
That is the only
In the
reason
jurisdiction.
that any of this is coming up. The Light Fest has done fireworks in the old pit area.
But that's.
During Light Fest, but that's city of Oshkosh. The only reason that any of our events need a special event permit in the city is when you get into needing fire or police staff. That's when that pulls in. If we can contain everything, we do not need permits. We are exempt from that.
Whoa. We still need permits from the city though, right?
Not for every event.
We have to follow city ordinance, which we're exempt.
Or you have to get a permit for firewood.
Yes,
For
yeah,
the
state
fireworks,
statute.
yeah.
Well, like a horse show or.
Fireworks is the one condition.
Okay.
Most of the events, we do not need any permits because we are designed as an event venue. So we are exempt from all those little knick-knacky permits that the city has to get. We don't need permits for the, to allow them to have fire pits. We don't need permits for all of the events. But if you have fireworks, that excludes all of that. If we have to use a county park and we have to have people crossing county line, now we need a permit. So it's only those couple of instances that you need to get into that. Otherwise, we're self-contained. We don't need any of that stuff. I guess my concern is that what is this gonna do to our regular budget process of all these extra stormwater fees? Is there any calculation to that? Because our budget's always getting cut, not expanded. So that's gonna incur more fees that we have to now cover on an annual basis. And we don't have any events out there outside of PGI that's gonna require a permit. I don't have anything that we've been inquired upon. I don't see anything that, it's only gonna drive up all of our expenses. When we go to develop that property to put in a simple gravel road, we're gonna get dinged, we're gonna get, gonna cost more. And I understand Steve's point that costs always go up. So it's gonna cost more in the future. but I'm just wondering if we're in the right balance.
Yeah, and to that point, you know, the county executive doesn't have a proposal yet, but. If it becomes an action item, he will have an opinion and we will tell you that, whether annex, not annex, and so. You know, he has had discussions with. Both the chairman and the city manager about annexation, but there's no proposal today, there's not even an action item, so.
Okay, we move on. Item 11, park directors update.
All right. I don't have a whole lot, as, all of you know, on the January 17th county board meeting, I had a request for boat landing automated pay stations, with the ARPA funds. That was obviously tabled, so that's on hold, that does include the Grundman boat landing one, so I might need to. Figure out a way to get that back within the project, so that way we have a pay station on August 1st, so we'll keep working through that. I'll let Justin talk about the candlelight cross-country ski at his, because that was a big success. And kudos to Justin and to Tom for putting in a lot of work for that event. And they did a great job. Working with the city, working with PDS, we're excited for some of the future ones, and the next big one is the glow in the dark Easter egg hunt in April, partnering with them. And then of course, thanks to Latham Hickey Steel, because obviously they're our sponsor for that event. So I did have a conversation with Wisconsin DNR in regards to the Waukau Dam grant and the stewardship grant. And it looks pretty promising. They do have quite a bit of funds, about 1.1 million. We have about 750,000 that we'd be requesting. So as I mentioned, the county board meeting, so if that project does get approved through the CIP process, I would be applying for that grant. Hopefully we can get 750,000, or at least a substantial amount, obviously, to go towards that. We bring it back to the board. I mentioned already the PGI public hearing, so I'll skip past that. And then really the last thing I have, just keep it short and sweet, is on Thursday is the bid opening for Grumman at 3 p.m. So I'll probably send out an email to this group, because I know that's been a big project. Just how the bid, I have a Fox Cities Greenways annual meeting right after that, so I might have to just quick send it out on my phone. So it might be very short email, but there's something to let you know kind of where those bids came in at, and if it looks like they'll be in budget, or where they are. So we're excited for that. Obviously, busy working with the engineers to kind of finalize some of those details, and Tom's been working with me on finalizing a lot of those details for amendments and to get that project going. So hopefully we come in budget. We had a lot of people at the pre-bid meeting. We had a lot of contractors there that could generate this contract. From Michael's, Radke, MCC, Northeast Asphalt, Yankee. We had a lot of contractors there, so hopefully we get a lot of bids.
Thank you, Adam. Staff update, start with Justin.
Yeah, as Adam mentioned, we had that candlelight hike. We're hoping to do cross-country skiing and snowshoeing, but the snow just didn't get enough, kind of melted. So we kind of nixed that, but it went very well. We had about 200 people register for the 3 days we were doing it, the Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon. I would say maybe 2/3 of the people showed up for that. But overall, yeah, it went really well. Didn't hear any complaints, a lot of good comments from people. So we plan to do that again, probably next year. As we go forward, we have more bagel programming coming up throughout the year. In February and March, we just kind of have activities they can go and do during the month. And as Adam said before too, the next biggest event day is going to be an Easter egg hunt. So we're planning that already and getting that going. So that was really good.
They're long for eggs.
Eggs, yeah, right. Hopefully the price of those eggs we need don't not go up like the real eggs do. So other than that, we have opened up our shelters for reservations, and that's going really well. We're starting to sell boat launch parking permits this year as well. And that's all I got.
Rick, you're next.
Looking at some new events, we are partnering with the City Parks Department for hosting their Easter egg hunt out here this year. due to some construction they have in the park, they needed a place to relocate that, so we'll be working with them. I did receive a call from the manager of Deer Fest, looking to possibly, I don't know if it's a relocate of that event, but I know that used to be here years ago and it is quite large. So that would, we're playing phone tag for the last 2 weeks, so eventually him and I will talk a little more and see exactly what he's looking for, but we have a lot of horse show interest, of course. We've added a barrel racing show this fall, which we haven't had. I don't know if we've ever had one here. I don't know if Tom remembers ever having any, but so it's just a different style, you know, something unique. I don't know, a little more exciting than watching a horse just prance around in slow motion. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. The quinceañeras seem to be picking up. We don't host a lot of weddings here like some of the other venues in town, but we seem to be pretty popular for the quinceañeras. I just booked another one yesterday, so I think we got 3 or 4 this year. Pretty simple event, and you know, we seem to be getting popular for those. Little COVID update. The vaccine clinic is going to a what they call a mobile platform. So they won't have a permanent setup in the south wing. They will still be using it every Wednesday. But they're just keep reducing their footprint size down. So maybe eventually, hopefully that'll go into the doctor's office and you'll get a COVID vaccine, just like your flu shot or everything else. The testing portion is still, you know, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. There isn't any known date on when that'll cease to exist out here. I think as long as the federal government keeps putting money at it, the health department will keep doing it. But with that being there, I can't really rent out the south wing for much. If we have a paying event come in, everyone does get evicted and they go find somewhere else for the couple of days. So it's not like we're using revenue on it. It's more of an inconvenience factor of having to move people out, clean it up quick, move them back in, you know. Biggest thing that's not in there is all the training sessions, so. And those people don't typically pay the, you know, Wisconsin Resource Center, correctionals, you know. A lot of those have had to find alternate locations when they were typically here. So it does make that a little bit challenging. But, so there's just a little update there. I have, over the last few years, had several groups ask about if we were ever gonna look at expanding the expo building. And I haven't done a lot of research into this as far as cost, viability, return on investment. But it is something that I hear about a couple times a year, people that are looking for more square footage. One of the dog shows in May, you know, uses one of the barns for additional, you know, grooming area and stuff. I have had several groups ask if, you know, we would ever entertain insulating and heating one of the barns. We did look into it briefly. The price was, I couldn't recoup the cost in 50 years because it only gets rented 3 times a year, you know. And I just don't see a lot of outside interest in something like that, you know, to add that as just a one-off rental, you know, for a reception or something. It's just, I don't see a lot of drive to that. So I don't know if insulating a barn is the right move. Eventually, probably want to look at doing some investigating on if we were to expand a building, how many events could then expand their footprint? And are there any events that we would then maybe pull from another location if we had a bigger facility for them to use? So I think eventually that's gonna have to be, you know, looked into. Obviously not a quick thing or a cheap thing, but whether or not it's the right thing, we'll have to investigate at some point, probably in the next year or 2, maybe. So just some things out there that people are looking for and might be a benefit to the property and maybe get some more revenue or some more events, but other than that, that's all I have.
Working on trees, so far we're over 80 trees removed, the ash trees, we'll probably go over 120 this year. It's unfortunate, we planted like 50 or 60 trees, so we're getting a little deficit. But the ones around the expo, if we do the expansion on the next lot, they'll be replaced during that project. Buoys, we'll probably get about 20 buoys, which is about 20% of the overall buoys will be repaired and repainted and bring them back. We did replace 8 pencil buoys from either getting run over by boats or getting damaged or just flat out stolen. They have a problem with people stealing buoys, so.
What do they do with them?
Put them in their yards as decorations. It's,
So then just drive around and find where they are.
there's a lot of land. Doesn't mean that they keep them on whatever.
Oh, that's true.
But yeah, there are no wake buoys. We lose 3 or 4 a year. So,
Crazy.
GPS inside of them.
and they don't,
Yes,
they do not sink. And then,
those apple bombs.
just so everybody's aware, in case you get phone calls, there's a big willow tree down at Asylum, just as you make the turn. When it snows on it, it goes below the 13-foot 6-inch. And it's been on the radar, but now it's starting to droop. The highway will be taking that out. So it's a big tree. It'll be shutting down that road during winter fishing, which people are gonna be upset. You can't take a tree down over a road with people driving under it.
The big tree.
The big tree.
It's got to go with trailers.
Too big for us. Cause it's a leaner, it's a Winnebago, and it's about a 40-inch diameter. But it's got a nasty lean on it.
Any updates? Josh?
Actually, I did, so I got an email from somebody. Her name is Elizabeth Van Manen. And she was talking about, doing a program with the Interscholastic Wisconsin Cycling League. And she wants to do something at Ken Roble Conservation Park. I don't know, did you get an email?
She reached out to Justin, yeah, we're asking for more information.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so I just thought that would be kind of a cool idea, you know, I feel like we're packing in the events and. It would be kind of cool to have just another event in there, and obviously if you're reaching out, then we're on the same page, but I think that'd be cool, it's more of a mountain biking event, and I know we kind of talked about. Possibly making that into a mountain biking. Park later on, but this would be kind of like a little, dip your toes in the water thing, or just a cool event to have for high schoolers, so. Love to be a part of that, and then, I guess my question was, I know. For you guys, I don't know how much help you guys have in the summer. I think we talked a little bit at the meeting about like just landscaping, and it doesn't seem like you guys have a lot of help, if I'm correct, like to do things.
We get about 6 seasonals that with their schedules equivalent to maybe 4.5 actually full-time, but they're, by the time you get them up to speed and get them going, they're almost all the way back to college. So yeah, we get okay help. But
Sure, and I guess like Steve was talking last time, we were talking about the vines. So like I did go out to the park to see, the vines, and you could see like how they planted them, and obviously they're all dead. But you gotta like really stay on top of those things to take care of them, so I get, for future budgeting, as it comes up next year, like thinking about how do we get to somebody that's really there all the time. I don't know if you guys need more help, obviously it's always about money, but. I just want to bring that up now so we don't get close to budget and then we're like, hey, we should talk about this, but like, maybe you guys should start thinking about. What do you guys really need help with, and do you need an extra person, because it's a lot that you guys, I'm finding out you guys do a lot, and it seems like you're doing a lot more. There's just a lot on your guys' plate, each of you seem like you guys are taking in more than you should have, I guess, so. Maybe think about that, and maybe us as a committee should start thinking about how we can get the parks to grow a little bit. I know everybody wants to like not have things grow, but this seems like something that needs to grow for you guys to be successful, and the more helpers you guys have, the better this whole thing's gonna be. So I hope, we can talk about that a little bit more as we get through the year here.
Jim?
I got a question on it, actually 2 questions. The town chairman for where this giving someone a property, that guy's name isn't Erdman, is it? It's a no. I'm just thinking, saying, but my next question. Yeah. Is, do we ever hear back about from the Department of Transportation with that piece of property up over here?
I received a
And that's
call,
what reminded me of her.
late December, I received a call from them, they were looking for just a little bit of information, so I know they're working on it. We're probably about 4, it was submitted in November was the letter of intent, but we submitted. I think in October or September, so we're about 5 months into it, so. Yeah, I mean, I can give them a call, check to see where it's going, but
I don't know if that's
it's
still
a very
on
time
our
process.
agenda.
Yes, it's still in the works. Yes, and it'll come back to this committee, obviously, once we hear from the DOT one way or another.
Aaron,
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Steve,
I know I talked to you about making sure we got the bill for Ken Robo Park. And maybe we want to invite them to a meeting, because I think that trail actually needs another layer of cinders. I mean, the weeds are coming through quite regularly. I know we spray it. There's a lot of trees that are dead out there. That pond needs to be restocked with fish. And that's all their responsibility. They control that park. All we are is the maintenance of it right now. So I mean, I think we need to basically talk with them and get those trees replanted. Get another layer of cinders on that trail and restock the pond, because there's no fish in it. You know, when they first put that beautiful fishing dock up that was loaded with people fishing. And now there's not a soul out there. I try to drive by there at least a couple times a week to check the activity, and there's no fish. You know, why would you fish? You know, throw a line in a pond and never catch anything. It's kind of useless, and that dock cost, you know, $150,000. I mean, we should stock the pond with some fish, so.
Should, instead of county fair, do you want me to invite? See if they'll come the next year. Okay.
okay, next meeting date, February 28th, 2023 at 9 AM.
And it'll be here probably, by the way.
In the same room?
Yeah, because I think otherwise we're jumping. This was the only room that was available through May when we switched to 9 AM, so. I just said, put us down for this room for now.
Future agenda items? Yeah. Oh, entertain a motion to adjourn,
So move, Powers.
moved by Supervisor Powers, second by.
I'll second.
Josh.
Oh my God.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Uh,
Aye.
he was looking over like, hey, oh, man.